The courtroom door swung open, and every head turned toward me. I could feel the weight of 100 eyes, but there was only one pair that mattered. Lydia's. My daughter-in-law sat at the defendant's table in a cream-colored blazer, her lawyer whispering something in her ear. Then she saw me. Her face went white as a ghost. Her mouth fell open, and before her attorney could stop her, she blurted out loud enough for everyone to hear, "Why are you here?" I adjusted my navy suit jacket, the same one I wore to her wedding 5 years ago, and walked down that aisle like I owned the place. Because legally, morally, and spiritually, I did. I didn't answer her question. Not yet. I just kept walking until I reached the front row and sat down, my cane resting against my knee. The judge hadn't entered yet, but the tension in that room was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Lydia turned back to her lawyer, her hands shaking. I caught the tail end of her whisper. "He wasn't supposed to be here." That's when I knew I had her. She thought I'd given up. Thought I'd crawled into some nursing home to rot quietly while she and my son lived off my life's work. She was wrong. Let me back up a second. My name is Franklin Moresby. I'm 74 years old, and I've learned something most people don't figure out until it's too late. The people who hurt you the worst aren't strangers. They're the ones you fed, the ones you trusted, the ones you loved more than your own breath. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I spent my whole life building something for my son, Brandon. After his mother died when he was 15, I became both parents rolled into one. I worked construction jobs until my knuckles bled. Saved every penny. Built a lakefront home with my own 2 hands, the kind of place people dream about but never get to touch. It wasn't just property. It was legacy. My wife's flowers still bloomed there every spring. Her laugh still echoed in those walls. When Brandon married Lydia, I thought I was gaining a daughter. She called me Dad, hugged me at holidays, told me I reminded her of her own father. I ate it up like a fool at a buffet. Looking back, I can see the cracks in her performance. The way she'd smile too wide. The way she always steered conversations toward money. But love makes you blind, and family loyalty makes you stupid. It started small. She'd offer to help with my bills. "You've done enough, Dad. Let us take care of you." Then documents started disappearing. Bank statements. Property deeds. My checkbook. When I asked questions, Brandon would say I was getting paranoid. "You're just tired, Dad. Let Lydia handle it." Handle it. That's what they called stealing from me. Then came the dinner. The one where Lydia announced, all smiles and wine glasses, that they'd bought my lake house. Bought it. Like I was some confused old man who didn't know what he owned anymore. I looked at Brandon, waiting for him to say it was a joke. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. That's when I knew my son had chosen his wife over his father. And that choice would cost them everything. Weeks later, I found the eviction notice on my dresser. My own home. The place where I raised my boy. They wanted me gone. So I left. Packed one bag, grabbed my wife's picture, and walked out without a word. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because here's what Lydia didn't know. She underestimated a 74-year-old man with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. She had no idea the storm I brought with me that morning. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you called family? Someone you trusted with your whole heart? Drop a comment and let me know, because what happened next will show you exactly what justice looks like when an old man decides he's done playing nice. I wasn't always this angry. There was a time when I believed the world rewarded hard work and loyalty. When I thought family meant something deeper than shared blood. I learned those lessons the hard way, but before the betrayal, before the courtroom, I was just Franklin Moresby. a simple man with simple dreams. I grew up in Clearwater, Florida, back when the town was half the size it is now. My father worked at the docks, and my mother cleaned houses for wealthy families on the coast. We didn't have much, but we had enough. I learned early that if you wanted something in this life, you worked for it. No handouts. No shortcuts. Just sweat and determination. I met Margaret when I was 23. She was working at a diner downtown, serving coffee and eggs to construction crews. I walked in one morning covered in sawdust, and she laughed at the mess I made sitting down. "You're tracking half the job site in here," she said, but her eyes were smiling. I married her 6 months later. Best decision I ever made. We built our life one brick at a time. I started my own construction company with a loan from the bank and a truck that barely ran. Margaret kept the books, answered the phones, and somehow managed to make our tiny apartment feel like a palace. When Brandon came along, we thought our family was complete. The three of us against the world. That lakefront property. I bought it with my first big profit. Margaret cried when she saw it. "This is ours," she kept asking, like she couldn't believe it. We built that house together. Every nail, every board, every coat of paint. Margaret planted roses along the front porch. Yellow ones. Her favorite. She'd sit out there every evening with a glass of sweet tea, watching the sun dip below the water. "This is heaven, Frank," she'd say. And for a while, it was. Then cancer took her. Stage 4. The doctors said 6 months, and she made it 8, fighting every single day. Brandon was 15. I watched my boy crumble at her funeral, and I made a promise right there at her grave. I'd be enough for him. Father and mother. I'd give him everything I had left. And I did. I showed up to every baseball game, even the ones that started at 6 in the morning. Helped him with homework I barely understood myself. Taught him how to throw a punch, fix a car, treat a woman right. When he got into college, I paid every cent. When he graduated, I threw him a party that cost more than my first truck. I thought I was building a man. Turns out I was building someone who'd forget where he came from. Lydia showed up during Brandon's second year working at an engineering firm. He brought her to Sunday dinner, all nervous and grinning like a kid with a secret. She was pretty, I'll give her that. Dark hair, bright smile, and a voice that sounded like honey poured over gravel. She shook my hand and said, "Mr. Moresby, Brandon talks about you constantly. You sound like a hero." A hero. I should have known right then. People who use words like that usually want something. But I was lonely. Margaret had been gone 10 years, and the house felt too big without her laughter filling it. Lydia would visit on weekends, help me in the garden, ask questions about Margaret like she really cared. "What was she like?" she'd ask, kneeling in the dirt next to me. "Brandon says you two were soulmates." I told her stories. About how Margaret hummed while she cooked. How she'd leave little notes in my lunchbox. How she never went to bed angry, even when I gave her plenty of reasons to. Lydia listened like every word mattered. Looking back, she was studying me. Learning my weak spots. Finding the cracks she could slip through. When Brandon proposed, I paid for the wedding. $15,000 I'd saved for emergencies. Lydia cried and hugged me, said I was the best father-in-law in the world. I walked her down the aisle because her own dad had passed years before. I gave a toast about family and forever. I believed every word. The first year of their marriage was fine. They'd come over for dinners. Lydia would bring dessert and compliment the house. "This place is a treasure, Dad," she'd say, running her hand along the porch railing. "You're so lucky to have this." I didn't hear the hunger in her voice. I was too busy being grateful my son had found someone. But then small things started changing. Lydia began asking about my finances. "Do you have a will, Dad? You should really get your affairs in order." She'd suggest I consolidate my accounts, simplify things. "Life's too complicated at your age," she'd say with that sweet smile. I started noticing Brandon would go quiet during these conversations. Like he was in on something I wasn't. One afternoon, I couldn't find my checkbook. I tore the house apart looking for it. When I mentioned it to Lydia, she said, "Oh, I grabbed that last week. Just organizing your paperwork. It's all safe." Safe. That word started feeling like a threat. I asked for it back, and she brought it 3 days later, but 2 checks were missing. "Bank error," she said. I already called them. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. Because the alternative meant my son had married a liar, and I'd welcomed her into my home with open arms. That night, I sat on the porch where Margaret used to sit, and I felt her absence like a knife in my chest. "Maggie," I whispered to the dark water, "I think I made a mistake. But the dead don't answer, and the living don't always tell the truth. I should have listened to my gut that day. But love makes fools of fathers. And I was the biggest fool of all." The stealing started slow, like a leak you don't notice until the ceiling caves in. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. 74 years old, living alone, maybe my memory wasn't what it used to be. That's what Lydia wanted me to think. That's what Brandon echoed every time I raised concerns. "Dad, you're just getting older." It happens. Getting older. Those 2 words became their favorite weapon. Say it enough times, and even a strong man starts to doubt himself. It was a Tuesday morning when I decided to pay my property taxes. I'd done it the same way for 20 years. Drive to the bank, withdraw cash, head to the county office, done by lunch. Simple. But when the teller pulled up my account, her smile faded. "Mr. Moresby, your savings balance is much lower than usual. Are you aware of the recent withdrawals?" My stomach dropped. "What withdrawals?" She turned the screen toward me. 7 transactions over 3 months. 500 here. 1,000 there. 1,200. 800. All labeled as transfers to an account I didn't recognize. $23,000. Gone. I drove straight to Brandon's office. Didn't call ahead. Just walked past the receptionist and into his cubicle. He looked up from his computer, surprised. "Dad? What's wrong? What's wrong?" My voice came out harder than I intended. "What's wrong is that someone's been draining my savings, and I want to know who." His face did something strange. A flicker of guilt, maybe, or fear. Then it smoothed over into concern. "Dad, sit down. Let's talk about this." He guided me to a chair like I was fragile, like I might break. "Lydia mentioned you've been stressed about finances. She's been helping you manage things, remember? Those transfers are probably just bill payments." "Bill payments don't add up to $23,000, Brandon." He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "Let me call Lydia. She handles all the paperwork. I'm sure there's a simple explanation." There it was again. Lydia handles it. Lydia knows. Lydia's taking care of it. When did my son become a puppet on his wife's string? Lydia arrived 20 minutes later, all concern and soft touches. She sat next to me, took my hand like I was a child needing comfort. "Dad, those transfers were for the tax payments on the lake house. Remember? We consolidated everything to make it easier for you." "I don't remember authorizing any of that." Her smile never wavered. "We talked about it at Christmas dinner. You said you didn't want to worry about it anymore. Brandon and I have been handling the property expenses to lighten your load." I stared at her, at that perfectly practiced expression of care. And I knew she was lying. I remembered Christmas dinner. I remembered every word. We'd talked about the weather, about Brandon's promotion, about Margaret's old recipes. Not once did I agree to let them touch my accounts. But Brandon sat there nodding along like she was reciting gospel truth. My own son. Choosing her story over mine. I left that office shaking. Not from age. From rage I couldn't release because part of me still hoped I was wrong. That there was some innocent explanation buried under the lies. I drove home and searched through every drawer, every closet, looking for my bank statements. All of them were gone. Every single one. The next week, I called the bank directly. Asked them to mail statements to a P.O. box I opened downtown. When they arrived, I sat at my kitchen table and went through them line by line. The transfers Lydia mentioned? They didn't go to any tax authority. They went to an account in her and Brandon's name. Joint account. My money, filling their pockets. I found something else too. A second mortgage on my house. $50,000, taken out 6 months ago. My signature was on the paperwork, but I never signed anything. I held that document up to the light, looked at every curve of the pen strokes. That wasn't my handwriting. It was close, but not close enough. My hands started trembling. Not from fear. From something colder. Something sharper. My daughter-in-law had forged my signature, had stolen my money, and my son had let her do it. I should have confronted them right then. Should have called the police, hired a lawyer, burned their world down. But there was a tiny, pathetic part of me that still hoped Brandon would come to his senses. That he'd walk through my door, apologize, make it right. I gave him one more chance. One more opportunity to be the man I raised. He never took it. Instead, Lydia called 2 days later. Her voice was bright and cheerful, like we were best friends. "Dad, we're having a family dinner this Sunday. Just us 3. I'm making pot roast, your favorite." She paused. "We have some exciting news to share." Exciting news. My chest tightened. I knew whatever she was about to say would change everything. But I agreed to come. Because I needed to look Brandon in the eye. Needed to see if there was anything left of the boy I raised, or if Lydia had hollowed him out completely. That Sunday, I drove to their house with Margaret's photo in my pocket. A reminder of what real love looked like. Of what loyalty meant. The house they lived in was nice. 2 stories, new cars in the driveway, landscaping that cost more than most people's monthly rent. All of it funded by my sweat. My years of breaking my back so my son could have a better life. Lydia greeted me at the door with a hug that felt like a python squeeze. "Dad, come in, come in. Dinner's almost ready." The table was set fancy. Candles. Wine glasses. She'd gone all out. I sat down across from Brandon, and he still wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I knew. Whatever was coming, he was part of it. Halfway through the pot roast, Lydia set down her fork and picked up her wine glass. She looked at Brandon, then at me, and her smile was so wide it looked painful. "We have some wonderful news," she said, her voice dripping with fake joy. "Brandon and I are buying the lake property." The room tilted. My fork clattered against my plate. "Buying? That house isn't for sale." Lydia laughed. Actually laughed. Like I'd told a joke. "Oh, Dad. We already signed the documents. The house is officially under new management. Don't worry, you'll still live there. We're just putting it in our names for legal and tax purposes. It's safer this way. Protects everyone." I looked at Brandon. Really looked at him. Waiting for him to say something. Anything. To tell his wife she was insane. To defend me. To remember who built that house. Who paid for his life? He cleared his throat. Dad, we thought this would be easier for you. Less stress. And when something happens, the property stays in the family without legal complications. When something happens. He meant when I died. They were already planning my funeral and dividing my assets while I sat there breathing. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. That house is mine. My wife's garden is there. Her memory is in those walls. You don't get to take that. Lydia's smile finally cracked. Just a little. Dad, the paperwork is already filed. It's done. That was the moment I understood. They hadn't asked for my permission. They'd stolen it, forged it, lied their way into owning the one thing I had left of Margaret. And they expected me to sit there and thank them for it. I grabbed my coat and walked out. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. I got in my truck and drove, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. When I got home, I sat in the driveway for an hour, staring at the house I'd built with my own hands. The house they thought they'd stolen. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to roll over. Wasn't going to let them erase me like I was already dead. Because sometimes, the only thing more dangerous than an old man's grief is his silence. And I was done being silent. That was the day I realized my own family was robbing me blind. And the war had just begun. The days after that dinner felt like walking through fog. I'd wake up in my own bed, in my own house, and for a split second everything would feel normal. Then reality would slam into me like a freight train. My son had betrayed me. The woman I'd welcomed as a daughter had orchestrated the whole thing. And I was supposed to just accept it. I didn't hear from Brandon for 2 weeks. No calls. No visits. Nothing. It was like I'd become a problem he could ignore if he just stayed away long enough. Lydia, though, she started showing up. Unannounced. Uninvited. She'd let herself in with a key I didn't remember giving her and act like everything was perfectly fine. Just checking on you, Dad, she'd say, breezing through my house like she owned it. Which, according to the forged paperwork, she did. She'd rearrange things. Move my mail. Organize my kitchen cabinets. Each visit felt like another layer of my independence being peeled away. One morning, I woke to find her in my kitchen making coffee. My coffee. In my house. "Morning, Dad," she said cheerfully. "I brought groceries. You're running low on everything." I stood in the doorway in my robe, exhausted and furious. "I didn't ask you to do that." "I know, but you need to eat. Can't have you wasting away." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Those eyes were calculating, cold. "Besides, we have to take care of our investment." Investment. She called my home an investment. The place where I'd held my dying wife. Where I'd raised my son. Where every corner held a memory worth more than money could measure. To her, it was just property. Just an asset to be managed. The temperature in the house shifted after that conversation. Subtle things started happening. My favorite chair on the porch got moved to the garage. "It's old and falling apart," Lydia explained. My meals, when she prepared them, would be left on the counter to get cold. "Oh, I thought you'd hear me call you," she'd say with fake concern. Mail started disappearing. Important documents. Bills. "Must have gotten lost," became her favorite excuse. Brandon finally showed up on a Thursday evening. He knocked, which felt like a sick joke since he'd grown up walking through that door like he belonged there. When I opened it, he looked tired. Guilty, maybe. But not enough to make it right. "Can I come in, Dad?" I stepped aside. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd taught him to tie his shoes, helped him with homework, celebrated every birthday. Now it felt like enemy territory. Lydia says you're upset about the house situation, he started. Upset. The word felt too small for what I was feeling. Your wife forged my signature, Brandon. She stole from me. And you helped her do it. He flinched. It's not like that. We're trying to help you. The property taxes alone are killing you. The maintenance costs. You're on a fixed income now. We're just trying to make sure you're taken care of. By stealing my home? We're not stealing anything. You still live here. Nothing's changed except who holds the title. It's for your own good. For my own good. That phrase made my blood boil. I built this house, Brandon. Every board. Every nail. I raised you here. Your mother died here. And you think you can just take it because you filled out some paperwork. He stood up, frustrated. Dad, you're being unreasonable. Lydia's been nothing but good to you. She helps you with bills, brings you food, checks on you. And this is how you repay her? With accusations. That's when I knew I'd lost him completely. He'd chosen his wife over the truth. Over me. Over everything I'd sacrificed to give him a good life. The man sitting in front of me wasn't my son anymore. He was Lydia's puppet, repeating her lies like they were his own thoughts. Get out, I said quietly. Dad. Get out of my house. While it's still mine. He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. The next morning, I found an envelope on my dresser. I hadn't heard anyone come in, which meant Lydia still had a key and was using it whenever she wanted. Inside was a single sheet of paper. An eviction notice. 30 days to vacate the premises. Signed by Brandon and Lydia Moresby, property owners. My hands shook reading it. Not from fear. From a rage so pure it felt like fire in my veins. They wanted me gone. Out of my own home. Out of the house I'd built with my bare hands. They wanted to erase me like I'd never existed. The notice was dated for the 1st of next month. I had 4 weeks. Those 4 weeks were the longest of my life. Lydia came by every few days, always with that fake sweetness dripping from her voice. Just want to make sure you're packing, Dad. Don't want to make this harder than it needs to be. She'd walk through the house, marking things. This furniture should stay. It came with the house, technically. My furniture. The couch Margaret picked out. The dining table we'd bought at an estate sale and refinished together. I started packing slowly. Each box felt like admitting defeat. I wrapped Margaret's photo in newspaper, packed her gardening tools, took cuttings from her roses to try to plant somewhere new. Somewhere that would never feel like home. Brandon didn't come back. Not once. His silence was louder than any words. On the last day, I stood in the empty living room. The walls echoed without furniture. Without life. Lydia had sent movers to take everything she deemed part of the property. I was left with 2 suitcases, a box of Margaret's things, and my truck. Lydia showed up as I was loading the last box. She leaned against the porch railing, examining her nails. It's really for the best, Dad. You need somewhere more manageable. Somewhere with less upkeep. This place was becoming too much for you. I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who'd stolen my life's work. Who'd manipulated my son. Who'd kicked me out of my own home without a shred of remorse. And I smiled. It must have scared her because she took a step back. Something funny? She asked, defensive. No, I said calmly. Just thinking about how Margaret used to say that liars always get found out. Just takes time. Her face hardened. I have no idea what you're talking about. You will, I promised. Then I got in my truck and drove away from the house I'd built. The home I'd lost. But not forever. Because I had a plan forming. A storm brewing. And Lydia had no idea what was coming. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment downtown. Bare walls. Thin carpet. The sound of traffic kept me up at night. I unpacked Margaret's photo first, set it on the nightstand. "I'm sorry, Maggie," I whispered. "But I'm going to make this right. I promise you." That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to pick up. Franklin Moresby? A man's voice. Familiar. Speaking. "Frank, it's Harvey Dunn. I heard through the grapevine what happened with your property. I'm sorry, son. That's a damn shame." Harvey. I hadn't talked to him in years. He'd been my attorney when I incorporated the construction business. Sharp as a tack even at 70-something. "News travels fast," I said. "Small town, Frank. Listen, I know it's none of my business, but something about this whole thing doesn't sit right with me. Would you mind if I took a look at the paperwork? Just to make sure everything was done properly." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to just let it go. Accept that I'd lost and move on with whatever years I had left. But the other part, the part that still heard Margaret's voice in my head, wanted justice. "Yeah," I said finally. "Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Bring everything you've got to my office tomorrow. 10 o'clock. We'll see what we're dealing with." I showed up at 9:45 with a folder full of documents I'd managed to save. Bank statements. The forged mortgage papers. The property transfer documents. Harvey spread them across his desk, put on his reading glasses, and went silent for a long time. Finally, he looked up. His face was grim. "Frank, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you sign any of these documents?" "No." He nodded slowly. "That's what I thought. Because this signature here." He pointed to the property transfer. "It's not yours. I've seen your signature 100 times. This is a forgery. A damn good one, but still a forgery." My heart started pounding. "You're sure? Positive? And this notary seal? It's fake. The registration number doesn't exist in the state database. Whoever did this committed fraud, Frank. Multiple counts of it." I sat back in my chair, processing what he was telling me. Lydia hadn't just stolen from me. She'd committed crimes. Serious crimes. And she'd been stupid enough to leave a paper trail. "There's more," Harvey said, pulling out another document. "They took out a second mortgage on the property. $50,000 using your forged signature as collateral. That loan. It went directly into an account in their names. They've been using your house as their personal piggy bank." The rage I'd been swallowing for months finally found a target. A legal target. "What can we do about this?" Harvey smiled. Not a happy smile. A predatory one. "We can do a lot, Frank. We can file criminal charges. Sue for fraud and forgery. Get your property back. And make sure your daughter-in-law spends some quality time thinking about her choices." "How long will it take?" "Couple months to build the case properly. I'll need to hire an investigator, get expert testimony on the forgeries, document everything. But Frank," he leaned forward, "we can win this. No question." I thought about it for maybe 5 seconds. Do it. Over the next 3 months, Harvey and his team built our case. They traced every transaction, documented every forged signature, interviewed notaries and bank employees. I spent sleepless nights in that tiny apartment, reliving every moment of betrayal. Every lie. Every theft. Brandon called once during that time. His voice was hollow. Dad, Lydia's worried you're going to cause trouble. She wants to know if you're planning something. Tell Lydia, I said slowly, that she should have worried about consequences before she forged my name. He hung up. We never spoke again before the court date. The morning of the hearing, Harvey called. Frank, I need to prepare you for something. Lydia doesn't know you're coming today. The notice went to her attorney, not to her directly. She thinks this is just a preliminary hearing. When you walk in, it's going to be a shock. Good, I said. Let it be. I put on my navy suit, the wedding suit, polished my shoes until they gleamed, looked at myself in the mirror and saw not a defeated old man, but a fighter. Margaret's voice echoed in my head. Give them hell, Franklin. I will, Maggie, I whispered. I promise. When I walked into that courtroom and saw Lydia's face drain of color, when she asked, Why are you here? In front of everyone, I knew I'd already won. Because the look in her eyes wasn't just surprise. It was fear. Pure, undiluted fear. And she was right to be afraid. That night, I lost more than a home. I lost my son. But sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what you're really made of. And what I was made of was steel. The kind that bends but never breaks. The kind that remembers every insult, every theft, every betrayal and waits patiently for the perfect moment to strike back. Lydia had asked me why I was there. I could have answered her right then. Could have told her I was there to take back everything she'd stolen. To expose every lie she'd told. To make sure she understood that stealing from an old man doesn't make you smart. It makes you a criminal. But I didn't say any of that. Not yet. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't in the words you say. It's in watching your enemy realize they've already lost. If you've ever had to fight for what's rightfully yours against people who were supposed to love you, drop a comment. Because what happened in that courtroom next will restore your faith that justice, even when it takes its sweet time, always finds its way home. The apartment I moved into wasn't much. 7th floor of a building that had seen better days. Thin walls where I could hear my neighbors arguing about bills and whose turn it was to take out the trash. The carpet was beige and worn in spots where decades of feet had walked the same path. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. The whole place smelled like someone else's life. I unpacked slowly. Not because I had a lot of stuff, but because every item I pulled from those boxes reminded me of what I'd lost. Margaret's photo went on the nightstand first. I couldn't sleep without seeing her face. Her garden tools stayed in the box. No point in having them without a garden. I kept the cuttings from her roses in a glass of water on the windowsill, watching them slowly die because there wasn't enough sunlight. Just like me in that place. The first week was the hardest. I'd wake up forgetting where I was, reaching for the sounds of the lake, the smell of morning air through screens that had been on those windows for 30 years. Instead, I got car horns and exhaust fumes. The sun came up wrong. Everything was wrong. Lydia called twice that first week. I didn't answer. She left voicemails dripping with fake concern. Dad, just wanted to make sure you're settling in okay. Let us know if you need anything. We're here for you. We. Like she and Brandon were some united front of care. Like they hadn't just thrown me out of my own house like yesterday's garbage. I deleted the messages without listening to them all the way through. The mail situation got worse. Important documents kept disappearing. My social security check was late 3 months in a row. When I called the office, they said they'd been sending everything to my old address. That's strange, the woman on the phone said. Our records show you requested all mail to continue going to the lakefront property. I never requested any such thing. But Lydia had access to everything. My accounts. My information. She'd probably called pretending to be me, keeping control of my mail so I wouldn't see bank statements or legal documents, keeping me in the dark while she drained whatever was left. I started going to the lakefront house at odd hours. Not to cause trouble, just to see it, to remember. I'd park down the street where they couldn't see my truck and watch the lights come on in the evening. Watch Lydia move through rooms that should have been mine. She'd rearranged everything. New furniture. Margaret's garden was overgrown, the roses choked by weeds. That hurt more than anything. 20 years my wife had tended those flowers, and Lydia had let them die in 3 months. One evening, I saw Brandon come home from work. He looked older, tired. He stood in the driveway for a long moment before going inside, like he was gathering strength just to walk through the door. For a second, I felt sorry for him. Wondered if he was starting to see who he'd married. But then he went inside, and the door closed, and my sympathy dried up. He'd made his choice. He could live with it. The days started blending together. I'd get up, make coffee, sit by the window watching the city wake up. Strangers going to jobs, living lives, none of them knowing or caring that an old man 7 floors up had lost everything. I started talking to Margaret's photo more. "I don't know if I can do this, Maggie," I'd say. "I'm tired. I'm so damn tired." But she'd just smile at me from behind that frame, and I'd remember how she never gave up on anything. Not her garden. Not me. Not Brandon even when he was being difficult as a teenager. She fought until cancer took the fight from her. And I'd promised her I'd take care of our son. That promise was ashes now, but maybe I could still take care of what we'd built together. The worst part wasn't the apartment or the loneliness. It was the meals. Lydia had promised to help me during that terrible dinner where they'd announced stealing my house. Said she'd make sure I was eating right. For the first month, she actually followed through. She'd drop off containers of food at irregular times. Cold pasta. Sandwiches that tasted like cardboard. Once she brought soup that I'm pretty sure was expired because I spent a night hugging the toilet after eating it. Then the food stopped coming altogether. No explanation. No warning. I was 74 years old, living on a fixed income in an expensive town, trying to figure out how to make Social Security stretch to cover rent and food. I started buying the cheapest groceries I could find. Ramen noodles. Canned soup. White bread. The kind of food that fills your stomach but leaves your spirit empty. I lost weight. Not intentionally. Just stopped feeling hungry most of the time. Food tasted like nothing. Everything tasted like nothing. 2 months into living in that apartment, I went to the bank to close my old checking account and open a new one they couldn't access. The bank manager, a young woman named Tessa, looked at my account history and frowned. "Mr. Moresby, are you aware there have been several overdraft fees on this account?" Overdraft fees? I haven't used that account in months. She turned her screen toward me. "Someone's been making withdrawals using your debit card. Small amounts. $20 here. $50 there. It's kept the account active and generated fees each time it goes negative." More theft. They weren't just content with taking my house. They were nickel-and-diming me even after I'd left. Bleeding me dry in every way possible. "Can you stop the card?" I asked. "Of course. I'll issue you a new one immediately." She paused. "Mr. Moresby, have you considered reporting this? This looks like fraud." I should have. Right then and there. But I was so tired. So worn down. "I'll think about it," I said. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off, staring at nothing. Margaret's photo caught the streetlight from outside, making it look like she was glowing. "They're killing me, Maggie," I whispered. "Not fast. Slow. Taking everything until there's nothing left." My phone rang. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail. But something made me pick up. Franklin Moresby? A man's voice. Rough but kind. Yeah. This is Harvey Dunn. Don't know if you remember me. I helped you incorporate your construction business back in '96. Harvey. I'd forgotten about Harvey. I remember, I said. Listen, I ran into Bill Morrison at the hardware store. He mentioned what happened with your property. Said your son and his wife took it from you. That true? I didn't have the energy to explain. Yeah. That's a damn shame, Frank. I'm sorry to hear it. He paused. Look, I know this might be overstepping, but would you mind if I took a look at the paperwork? Just curious if everything was done by the book. By the book. I almost laughed. Nothing about what they'd done was by the book. But I was too tired to care anymore. Too beaten down to fight. Sure, I said. Why not? Bring what you have to my office tomorrow. 10 a.m. I'm at the same place, above the barbershop on Main. I hung up without saying goodbye. Sat there in the dark thinking about how pointless it all was. They'd won. I'd lost. Looking at paperwork wouldn't change that. But I had nothing else to do tomorrow. Nowhere else to be. An appointment gave me a reason to get out of bed. I showed up at Harvey's office at 9:50 the next morning. The building looked the same as I remembered. Narrow stairs that creaked under my weight, smell of Old Spice and coffee drifting from the barbershop below. Harvey's door had his name painted on frosted glass, old-school style. Professional. He looked older than I remembered, but then again, so did I. White hair, deep lines around his eyes, but those eyes were sharp. Alert. He shook my hand firm and gestured to a chair across from his desk. Thanks for coming, Frank. Coffee? Sure. He poured from a pot that looked like it had been sitting there since dawn. Handed me a mug that said, World's Okayest Lawyer. Made me smile despite everything. First time I'd smiled in weeks. I pulled out the folder I'd brought. Everything I'd managed to save before Lydia cleaned out my filing cabinet. Bank statements with highlighted transactions I didn't make. The property transfer documents. The second mortgage paperwork. The eviction notice. My whole life's destruction in a manila folder. Harvey spread it across his desk like a detective examining evidence. Put on reading glasses that hung on a chain around his neck. Went quiet. Really quiet. The only sound was pages turning and the tick of an old clock on the wall. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I drank my coffee and waited. Finally, he looked up. His face had changed. The casual friendliness was gone, replaced by something harder. Angry. Frank, did you sign any of these documents? No. He picked up the property transfer, held it toward the light from his window. You're absolutely certain? Because I need to know the truth before I say what I'm about to say. Harvey, I never signed a damn thing. They did this behind my back. He set the paper down carefully, like it might explode. Then your daughter-in-law committed fraud. Multiple counts. This signature. He pointed with a pen. It's not yours. I've seen your signature on contracts for years. Whoever copied this did a decent job, but they got the M wrong. Your M has a distinctive loop here. He traced it with his finger. This one doesn't. This is a forgery. My heart started beating faster. Not from stress. From something else. Something that felt like hope but sharper. You're sure? Positive. And look at this notary seal. He pulled out a magnifying glass, examined the stamp. See this registration number? I'm going to bet you $20 right now that when I call the state notary commission, this number won't exist. This seal is fake, Frank. Completely fraudulent. I leaned forward, staring at the document like I was seeing it for the first time. What does that mean? It means the transfer isn't legal. It means your house is still yours, legally speaking. They thought they could steal it with paperwork, but sloppy criminals make sloppy mistakes. He pulled out another document. And this second mortgage? Same fake signature. Same fake notary. $50,000 they borrowed against your property using forged documents. That money went straight into an account in their names. I can trace it. The room felt different suddenly. Brighter. Like someone had opened windows I didn't know were closed. Can we do something about this? Harvey took off his glasses, met my eyes. Frank, we can do a lot more than something. We can file criminal charges for fraud and forgery. We can sue to void the property transfer and get your house back. We can make your daughter-in-law wish she'd never heard your name. He paused. But I have to warn you. This won't be quick or easy. It'll take months to build the case properly. We'll need expert testimony, forensic document analysis, bank records, witnesses. And your son is going to be caught in the middle of it. Brandon made his choice when he helped her steal from me. Harvey nodded slowly. Fair enough. Then let's do this right. I'll need a retainer to get started. $5,000 to cover initial costs. Investigation, expert witnesses, filing fees. We can work out the rest as we go. $5,000. I had maybe $6,000 left in my new checking account after paying first and last month's rent on the apartment. This would take almost everything. Leave me barely scraping by. But what was I saving it for? To die alone in that depressing apartment while Lydia lived in my house? Do it, I said. Take whatever you need. Harvey smiled. Not his friendly smile. His lawyer smile. The one that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Frank, I'm going to enjoy this case. I haven't had a good fight in years, and your daughter-in-law just volunteered to be my sparring partner. Over the next 3 months, Harvey worked like a man possessed. He hired a private investigator named Marcus who looked like he bench-pressed cars for fun, but had the mind of an accountant. Marcus traced every transaction, photographed every document, interviewed bank tellers and employees at the county clerk's office. Built a timeline of exactly how Lydia had stolen my life piece by piece. The handwriting expert Harvey hired was a woman named Dr. Patricia Chen. She looked at my signatures under microscopes and with special lighting, compared them to the forged documents. Her report was 30 pages long and concluded with absolute certainty. Franklin Moresby did not sign the documents in question. She even identified the pen type Lydia had used, the angle she'd held it, the pressure points that didn't match my natural handwriting. It was beautiful. Scientific proof of theft. The notary fraud was even easier to prove. Harvey called the state commission, and they confirmed what he'd suspected. The registration number on the seal didn't exist. Had never existed. Someone had bought a fake stamp online and used it to make the forgery look legitimate. Stupid. Arrogant. Exactly what we needed. During those months, I lived like a monk. Ate the cheapest food I could find. Didn't turn the heat on even when October came and the apartment got cold. Saved every penny in case Harvey needed more money. But mostly, I waited. Waited for the case to be ready. Waited for justice. Lydia and Brandon didn't know what was coming. As far as they were concerned, I'd given up. Gone quietly. The old man had accepted defeat and crawled away to die alone. They were wrong. Brandon called me once during that time. His voice sounded hollow, tired. Dad, Lydia's asking if you're planning to cause any trouble. She's worried you might try to make problems with the house. Tell Lydia, I said slowly, letting each word land like a hammer. that she should have thought about consequences before she committed fraud. Silence on the other end. Then, what are you talking about? She forged my signature, Brandon. Stole my money. Used my house as collateral for loans I never approved. And you helped her do it. Dad, that's not. I have proof. Documents. Expert testimony. A lawyer who's very excited about taking this to court. I paused. Tell your wife that the old man she thought was too weak to fight back? He's coming for everything she stole. And he's bringing lawyers. I hung up. Blocked his number. We never spoke again before the trial. Harvey called me on a Tuesday morning in early November. Frank, we're ready. I'm filing the lawsuit today and requesting an expedited hearing given the nature of the fraud. Judge Morrison owes me a favor, so we should get on the docket within the month. Do they know I'm coming? Harvey chuckled. The notice goes to their attorney, not directly to them. As far as Lydia knows, this is just a preliminary hearing about property disputes. She has no idea you'll be sitting in that courtroom. Perfect. Let it be a surprise. Let her feel the same shock I felt when I found out my family had betrayed me. The hearing was scheduled for December 3rd. 10 a.m. Courtroom 4B. Harvey prepped me for days. Told me what questions might come up, how to stay calm, what to expect. But mostly, he told me to trust him. Frank, I've been practicing law for 42 years. I've never lost a case this clear-cut. The evidence is overwhelming. All you have to do is show up and tell the truth. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at Margaret's photo. Tomorrow, Maggie, I whispered. Tomorrow I get our home back. Tomorrow they pay for what they did. I swear I felt her answer in the dark. Felt her hand on my shoulder like she used to do when I was stressed. Felt her telling me I was doing the right thing. That she was proud of me for fighting. The morning of December 3rd, I woke before dawn. Showered, shaved, put on my navy suit. The wedding suit. Polished my shoes until I could see my reflection. Looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and saw not a defeated old man, but a fighter. Someone who refused to go down without swinging. Harvey picked me up at 8:30. Drove us to the courthouse in his old Cadillac that smelled like leather and determination. You ready for this? He asked. I've been ready for 3 months. Remember, when we walk in, Lydia's going to react. Don't engage. Don't say anything. Let me do the talking. Your presence is enough. We parked and walked toward the courthouse steps. My cane clicked against concrete. My heart pounded not from fear but from anticipation. From knowing that in a few minutes, Lydia would see me. Would understand that the old man she'd underestimated had spent 3 months building her cage. Harvey held the door open. We walked through security, down the marble hallway toward courtroom 4B. I could hear voices inside, lawyers talking, people settling into seats. We paused outside the door. Last chance to turn back, Harvey said, but he was smiling. He knew I wouldn't. Let's go get my house back. He pushed open the door, and we walked in. The courtroom went quiet. People turned. And then I saw her. Lydia, sitting at the defendant's table in a cream blazer, looking confident. Looking like she'd already won because she thought I wasn't coming. Her eyes found me. Went wide. Her face drained of color like someone had opened a valve and let all the blood out. Her mouth fell open, and before her lawyer could stop her, she blurted out loud enough for everyone to hear. Why are you here? I didn't answer. Just walked down that aisle with Harvey beside me, my cane clicking, each step echoing in the silent room. I sat in the front row directly across from her, adjusted my suit jacket, and smiled. Calm. Cold. The smile of a man who knows he's already won. She turned to her lawyer, panicked. whispering something urgent. He looked confused. She kept glancing back at me, like I was a ghost she couldn't believe was real. Harvey leaned over and whispered, "She wasn't supposed to be here either. This was supposed to be just the lawyers. Judge must have required the defendants present. Even better. Front row seats to her own destruction." The bailiff stood. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Morrison presiding. Everyone stood. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen every trick in the book. She sat, we sat, and she looked at the docket. Case number 2024, CV 8847. Moresby versus Moresby. Property fraud and forgery. She looked up, her eyes finding me. "Mr. Franklin Moresby, I understand you're the plaintiff?" I stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're representing that the defendants, Brandon and Lydia Moresby, fraudulently transferred property belonging to you?" "Yes, Your Honor. My house, my savings, my life." Lydia's lawyer stood quickly. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. My clients believed this was a preliminary hearing, not a full." "Your clients were properly notified through you, Counselor. If they misunderstood the nature of these proceedings, that's not the court's problem." Judge Morrison looked at Harvey. "Mr. Dunn, present your evidence." And Harvey did. For the next 2 hours, he systematically destroyed every lie Lydia had built. Showed the forged signatures under magnification, the fake notary seal, the bank records proving theft. Called Dr. Chen to testify about the handwriting analysis. Called the State Notary Commission representative who confirmed the seal was fraudulent. Called bank employees who testified about suspicious transactions. Lydia tried to maintain her composure, but I watched it crack. Watched her whisper frantically to her lawyer. Watched her dab at fake tears with tissues. Watched her try every manipulation that had worked on Brandon, on me, on everyone else. But Judge Morrison wasn't buying it. "Mrs. Moresby," the judge said at one point, her voice sharp, "did you or did you not sign your father-in-law's name to these documents?" Lydia's voice shook. It was a misunderstanding. He'd said we could handle his affairs. I thought I was helping. That's not what I asked. Did you sign his name? Yes, but... And did you have his permission to do so? Silence. Long, damning silence. "Answer the question, Mrs. Moresby." "No," she whispered. "Not specifically. But he was getting older, and..." "Thank you. That's all I need to hear." Brandon sat next to her, motionless. His head hung low. He never looked at me once during the entire hearing. Couldn't face what he'd become. What she'd turned him into. When Harvey finished presenting evidence, Lydia's lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity. Tried to say I'd been confused, unable to manage my own affairs, that they'd acted in my best interest. Harvey destroyed that too, presenting my medical records showing I was mentally sound, financially capable, and perfectly able to manage my own life. The judge called a 15-minute recess to review the evidence. Those 15 minutes felt like hours. I sat in that courtroom, hands folded on my cane, watching Lydia and Brandon whisper urgently with their lawyer. Watching them realize they'd lost. When Judge Morrison returned, her face was set. Cold. "I've reviewed the evidence presented, and I find it compelling and conclusive. The signatures on the property transfer documents were forged. The notary seal was fraudulent. The second mortgage was obtained through fraudulent means. This is not a case of family miscommunication or elder care. This is theft." Lydia started crying. Real tears this time. Tears of fear. "Therefore, I hereby order the following. All property transfers are voided and ownership is returned to Franklin Moresby immediately." The second mortgage obtained through fraudulent means is declared null and void, and the lending institution will be notified. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney for criminal prosecution of Mrs. Lydia Moresby on charges of fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Lydia sobbed into her hands. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but there was nothing he could do. The evidence was too clear. The crime too obvious. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Order. Mr. Moresby, your property will be returned to you within 30 days. The defendants have that long to vacate. Court is adjourned. I stood slowly, my legs shaking not from weakness but from the weight of justice finally delivered. Harvey shook my hand, grinning like he'd just won the Super Bowl. We did it, Frank. We got your house back. But I wasn't looking at Harvey. I was looking at Lydia. At the woman who'd stolen my home, my money, my son. She looked back at me, mascara running down her face, and I saw something I'd never seen before. She was afraid. Really afraid. I walked past their table on my way out. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. My presence said everything. The old man they'd buried in betrayal had just risen from the grave. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Small-town news must have picked up the case. Cameras flashed. A woman shoved a microphone in my face. Mr. Moresby, do you have any comment on the verdict? I stopped. Looked directly into the camera. Justice doesn't need noise, I said quietly. Just truth. Harvey drove me back to my apartment, but it didn't feel like my apartment anymore. It felt like a temporary stop. A waiting room before going home. 30 days, Harvey said as we pulled up. Then that house is yours again. Everything she stole. You're getting it all back. I nodded, too emotional to speak. Shook his hand, got out of the car, climbed 7 flights of stairs to the place I'd been dying in for 3 months. But I wasn't dying anymore. I was alive. Finally alive. That night, I sat in the dark with Margaret's photo and I cried. Not from sadness. From relief. From the weight of 3 months of fighting finally lifting. We won, Maggie, I whispered. We're going home. And somewhere in the silence, I swear I heard her whisper back. I never doubted you for a second. He wasn't supposed to be here. That's what Lydia had said when she saw me. Those 5 words told me everything I needed to know. She'd thought I was too old, too weak, too defeated to fight back. She'd underestimated the one thing you should never underestimate in an old man, the burning need to protect what he's built. To honor what he's lost. To prove that age doesn't mean powerless. She'd asked why I was there. And now she knew. I was there because she thought I wouldn't be. I was there because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world isn't youth or strength or money. It's an old man with nothing left to lose and everything left to prove. Have you ever watched someone underestimate you, only to realize too late what you're capable of? Tell me in the comments, because the next chapter shows what happened when I finally walked back through the door of the home they stole. And what I found there broke my heart all over again. Harvey's call came 3 days after the verdict. Frank, the paperwork's been filed. The property is officially yours again. Judge expedited everything given the circumstances. You can move back in starting tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word hung in the air like a promise I'd stopped believing in. For 3 months I'd lived in that apartment waiting for this moment, and now that it was here, I felt something strange. Not just relief. Fear. What if the house didn't feel like home anymore? What if Lydia had destroyed everything that mattered? Frank. You still there? Yeah. Tomorrow. I'll be ready. That night, I packed my belongings back into the same boxes I'd used when they kicked me out. Didn't take long. I hadn't accumulated anything in this place. Hadn't wanted to get comfortable. The apartment was never meant to be home. Just a pit stop between losing everything and getting it back. Margaret's photo went into my coat pocket this time. Wanted her close for the drive back. Her rose cuttings had died weeks ago despite my best efforts. No sunlight. Wrong soil. Wrong everything. But maybe I could plant new ones from her original bushes if any were left. I barely slept. Kept imagining what I'd find. Would the house be trashed? Would Lydia have stripped it bare out of spite? Harvey said they had 30 days to remove their personal belongings, but the judge had ordered them out immediately after the verdict. They'd moved fast, according to Harvey's investigator. Packed up and left within 48 hours. Morning came slow and cold. December in Florida isn't brutal, but there's a chill that gets into your bones when you're my age. I dressed in regular clothes this time. Jeans. Flannel shirt. Work boots. The uniform of a man about to reclaim what's his. The drive to the lake felt longer than I remembered. Every turn brought back memories. The hardware store where I'd bought supplies to build that house. The diner where Margaret and I used to get breakfast on Sundays. The church where we buried her. All of it still standing while my world had collapsed and rebuilt itself. I turned onto Lakeshore Drive and my heart started hammering. There it was. My house. Still painted the pale yellow Margaret had chosen. Still surrounded by oak trees. Still sitting on the water's edge like it had been waiting for me. I pulled into the driveway and just sat there for a minute. The porch swing was gone. Margaret's favorite spot. Lydia must have taken it. The mailbox had been painted over, my name replaced with theirs, but someone had already scratched it off. Probably Harvey's doing. I got out slowly, grabbed my cane, walked up the steps I'd built with my own hands 30 years ago. The key Harvey gave me turned smooth in the lock. The door opened. The smell hit me first. Wrong. Chemical cleaners and cheap perfume instead of Margaret's lavender sachets and lemon polish. I stepped inside and my chest tightened. They'd changed everything. The furniture was different. Modern stuff that didn't fit the character of the house. Margaret's antique credenza was gone. The family photos that lined the hallway had been replaced with abstract art I didn't recognize. The walls were painted gray where they'd been cream. Cold. Impersonal. Like they'd tried to erase every trace of the life Margaret and I had built. I walked through room by room, cataloging the damage. The kitchen had new appliances, but Margaret's cast iron skillet was missing. That skillet had been her grandmother's. Irreplaceable. The living room carpet was ripped up, replaced with hardwood that looked expensive but felt wrong under my feet. Our bedroom, where Margaret took her last breath, had been turned into some kind of home office. Desk. Filing cabinets. Not a single memory left. But the worst was the garden. I stepped onto the back porch and looked at what used to be Margaret's pride and joy. The roses were dead. All of them. Choked by weeds and neglect. The stone pathway she'd laid was cracked. The bird bath she'd saved for months to buy was tipped over, covered in moss. 3 months. That's all it took for them to kill 20 years of love and care. I sat down on the porch steps and felt something break inside me. Not anger this time. Grief. Raw and fresh like the day she died. They hadn't just stolen my house. They'd murdered her memory. Destroyed the last physical pieces of her that existed in this world. I pulled her photo from my pocket, stared at her smile. I'm sorry, Maggie. I'm so sorry I let this happen. The afternoon sun was warm on my face, but I felt cold. Hollow. Winning the house back wasn't enough. They'd gutted it. Turned it into a shell of what it was. And no court order could bring back what they destroyed. I spent the rest of that day walking through rooms, making lists of what was missing, what was damaged, what could be fixed. Harvey said I could sue for damages, but money wouldn't bring back Margaret's skillet, or her grandmother's quilt, or the feeling of walking into a home filled with love instead of emptiness. As the sun set over the lake, I stood at the window where Margaret used to watch the water and made a decision. I wouldn't let them win. Not completely. This house might look different, might feel different, but it was still mine. Still standing on the land my family had owned for 3 generations. Still holding the walls that witnessed my best and worst days. I'd rebuild. Not the house. That was already built. But the home. The feeling. The memories. I'd plant new roses. Repaint the walls. Find new furniture that felt right. Hang photos of Margaret in every room. Slowly, piece by piece, I'd bring her back to this place. Because restoration isn't just about property. It's about dignity. About refusing to let thieves steal not just your possessions but your soul. That night I slept in my old bed, in my old room, under my old roof. The mattress was different and the walls were wrong, but I was home. Finally home. And somewhere in the dark, I felt Margaret's smile. That's when I decided I wasn't done. I was becoming it. The first week back in the house was harder than living in that apartment. At least the apartment had been honestly empty. This place was full of ghosts and wrong things pretending to be right. Every room reminded me what I'd lost and what Lydia had destroyed. I started small. Ripped out the gray paint in the hallway first. Spent 2 days scraping and sanding until my arms ached and my lungs burned from dust. Underneath was the original cream color Margaret had chosen. Faded but still there. I repainted it exactly the same shade, even drove to 3 different stores to match it perfectly. Next was the furniture. Most of what Lydia bought was cheap garbage trying to look expensive. Particle board dressers. Fake leather couches. I dragged it all to the curb and called a charity to haul it away. Then I went to estate sales and thrift stores looking for pieces that felt right. Found a credenza similar to Margaret's. Not the same, but close enough to not hurt every time I looked at it. The garden took longer. I wasn't young anymore and my back reminded me daily. But every morning I'd go out there with gloves and tools, pulling weeds, turning soil, preparing beds for new roses. Harvey stopped by one afternoon and found me on my knees in the dirt. "Frank, you should hire someone to do this. You're going to hurt yourself. Margaret planted these with her own hands. I'm replanting them with mine." He didn't argue after that. Just helped me haul bags of mulch from the truck. I ordered rose bushes from the same nursery Margaret had used. Yellow ones. Her favorites. When they arrived, I planted each one carefully, talking to her while I worked. "This one's for the morning you told me you were pregnant. This one's for our 20th anniversary. This one's for the day you said my name for the last time." Planting memories. That's what I was doing. Rebuilding a life from dirt and determination. But the physical work was easier than the emotional toll. Brandon never called. Never stopped by. I'd see his truck drive past sometimes, slow down like he might turn in, then speed up and disappear. Part of me wanted him to come. To apologize. To be the son I raised instead of the stranger he'd become. But a bigger part knew that bridge was burned beyond repair. Lydia, though. She sent letters. 3 of them in 2 weeks. All saying the same thing in different words. She was sorry. She'd made mistakes. She never meant to hurt me. Brandon was suffering. Couldn't I find it in my heart to forgive them? I burned every letter in the fireplace without reading past the first paragraph. Forgiveness is earned, not begged for. And she hadn't earned a damn thing except her criminal charges. Harvey kept me updated on the legal situation. District Attorney is moving forward with prosecution. Fraud. Forgery. Elder abuse. She's looking at real prison time if convicted. Her lawyers trying to negotiate a plea deal. What kind of deal? Probation, restitution, community service, no jail time. He paused. They want to know if you'd be willing to make a statement supporting leniency. I laughed. Actually laughed. Tell them no. Tell them she can explain to a judge why she thought stealing from a 74-year-old man was acceptable behavior. That's what I figured you'd say. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for January. Harvey told me I didn't need to attend, but I wanted to. Wanted to look her in the eye one more time. Wanted her to see that the old man she'd broken was still standing. As Christmas approached, the house started feeling less wrong. Not right yet, but getting there. I hung lights on the porch like Margaret used to. Put up a small tree in the living room. Didn't have anyone to share it with, but I wasn't doing it for company. I was doing it for her. For us. For the life we'd built that no thief could completely destroy. Harvey came over for dinner on Christmas Eve. Brought wine and stories about cases from 40 years ago. We sat on the porch watching the lake and not talking about betrayal or courts or missing sons. Just two old men grateful to still be breathing. You did good, Frank, he said as he was leaving. Not just winning the case. This. He gestured at the house, the lights, the beginning of the garden coming back. This is what justice looks like. Not revenge. Restoration. After he left, I sat alone with Margaret's photo and thought about that word. Restoration. Not just fixing what was broken, but making it meaningful again. Making it matter. The roses would bloom in spring. The house would feel like home again eventually. The pain would fade to something bearable. But what I'd learned in those months of fighting, of losing, of clawing my way back, would never leave me. I'd learned that family isn't guaranteed by blood. That love without loyalty is just words. That the strongest thing about getting old isn't your body or your mind. It's your refusal to disappear quietly when someone tries to erase you. New Year's Eve, I made a resolution standing in the garden Margaret loved. I wouldn't waste what was left of my life being angry. Wouldn't poison my remaining years with bitterness over what Brandon had become. I'd live. Really live. Honor her memory by building something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. The preliminary hearing came fast. January 15th. Cold morning with frost on the grass. I wore the navy suit again. My armor. My reminder that I'd fought and won. The courtroom was smaller this time. Just Lydia, her lawyer, the prosecutor, and Judge Morrison. Harvey sat beside me in the gallery. Lydia looked different. Thinner. Tired. Her cream blazer hung loose like she'd lost weight. Good. Let her feel a fraction of what she put me through. The prosecutor laid out the charges. 3 counts of forgery. 2 counts of fraud. 1 count of elder financial abuse. Each one carrying potential prison time. Lydia's lawyer tried to paint her as a confused daughter-in-law trying to help. The prosecutor destroyed that story with evidence. Bank records. Expert testimony. My medical records proving I was competent. Judge Morrison listened without expression. When both sides finished, she looked directly at Lydia. Mrs. Moresby, do you understand the severity of these charges? Yes, Your Honor. Her voice shook. Do you wish to enter a plea at this time? Her lawyer whispered something. She nodded. Not guilty, Your Honor. Not guilty. After everything. After being caught with evidence so clear a child could see it. She was going to make this a fight. Judge Morrison set a trial date for March. Gave both sides time to prepare. As we filed out, Lydia tried to approach me. Harvey stepped between us. Mr. Moresby has nothing to say to you. She looked past him, her eyes wet. I'm sorry, Dad. Please. I made mistakes, but I never wanted this. I met her eyes. Saw the manipulation still there underneath the tears. "You're not sorry you did it," I said quietly. "You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." We left her standing in that hallway, broken, exposed, finally facing consequences. The ride home was quiet. Harvey dropped me off and I stood in my driveway looking at the house. My house. My victory. My restoration. Inside, Margaret's photo sat on the mantel where it belonged. The walls were the right color again. The garden was sleeping but would wake in spring. Everything was slowly, painfully, becoming what it should be. I'd won the battle. But the war wasn't over yet. March would bring the trial. More testimony. More evidence. More watching Lydia try to escape justice. But I was ready. Because the old man she'd buried in betrayal had learned something valuable in his grave. Sometimes dead men come back. And when they do, they bring storms. March came with warm winds and the first buds on Margaret's roses. 3 months of waiting. 3 months of rebuilding. 3 months of silence from Brandon. The trial was set for March 23rd. Harvey called the week before with final preparations. "The prosecutor's case is solid, Frank. But I need you to be ready. Lydia's lawyer is going to try to make you look confused. Forgetful. Like you gave permission and just don't remember. Can you handle that?" "I can handle anything after what I've been through." "Good. Because this is the last fight. After this, it's over. She either goes to prison or she doesn't. Either way, you'll have closure." Closure. Strange word for what felt like an open wound that refused to heal. The morning of the trial, I woke before dawn. Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts racing. I made coffee, sat on the porch watching the sun rise over the lake. Margaret would have loved this morning. Cool but not cold. Sky painted pink and orange. Everything peaceful except my heart. I put on the navy suit one last time. Straightened the tie. Looked in the mirror and saw a man who'd survived hell and come out standing. Whatever happened today, I'd already won the important battle. I had my home. My dignity. My self-respect. Harvey picked me up at 8. The courthouse was already crowded. News crews outside. This had become a bigger story than I'd realized. Elder abuse. Family betrayal. Small-town drama. The reporters shouted questions as we walked past. "Mr. Moresby, how do you feel about your daughter-in-law facing prison?" "Mr. Moresby, have you spoken to your son?" "Mr. Moresby, do you want her to go to jail?" Harvey shielded me through the doors. Inside, the hallways were quieter. Professional. We found the courtroom and took our seats. The prosecutor, a woman named Sarah Chen, came over to brief us. "We're going to present the evidence systematically. Documents. Expert testimony. Your testimony will be last. Just tell the truth and don't let them rattle you." She paused. "Fair warning. Your son is here. He's testifying for the defense." My stomach dropped. "Brandon's testifying against me?" "He's testifying that he believed his wife was acting with your permission. That you'd become forgetful and they were helping manage your affairs. So that's how it was. He'd chosen her completely. Would lie under oath to protect her. Would destroy his father's credibility to save his wife." I nodded slowly. "Okay. Let him." The bailiff called us to order. Judge Morrison entered. The jury was sworn in. 12 people who decide if Lydia paid for her crimes or walked free. I studied their faces. Older woman in front looked sympathetic. Young man in back looked bored. Middle-aged woman in the second row kept glancing at me. The prosecutor started with the bank records, showed transaction after transaction, money disappearing from my accounts, the fake signatures, the forged notary seals. Each piece of evidence projected on screens for the jury to see. Clear. Undeniable. Lydia sat at the defendant's table looking small, vulnerable. Her lawyer had dressed her in a modest gray dress, hair pulled back, minimal makeup, trying to look like a good daughter-in-law who made innocent mistakes, not a criminal who'd systematically stolen from an old man. The handwriting expert testified next. Dr. Patricia Chen, with her charts and magnified images, showed exactly how the forged signatures differed from my real ones. The pressure points, the angle, the slight hesitation marks that proved someone was copying rather than signing naturally. Lydia's lawyer tried to discredit her. Isn't it possible Mr. Moresby's signature changed over time due to age? No. These discrepancies are not consistent with natural aging. They're consistent with forgery. The prosecutor called the notary commission representative, confirmed the seals were fake, confirmed no legitimate notary had witnessed any of these documents. Then came Brandon. He walked to the stand without looking at me, swore to tell the truth, sat down and finally met my eyes. I saw guilt there, but also defiance. He'd made his choice. Lydia's lawyer questioned him gently. Mr. Moresby, can you describe your father's mental state in the year before the property transfer? He was forgetful, would repeat stories, forget where he put things. We were worried about him. Lies. All lies. But he said them under oath. Did your wife forge documents, or was she acting on your father's behalf? She was helping him. He'd asked us to handle his paperwork, said it was too much stress. We thought we were doing what he wanted. The prosecutor stood for cross-examination. Mr. Moresby, do you have any documentation of your father requesting this help? No, it was verbal. Any witnesses to these conversations? Just me and Lydia. How convenient. Did your father ever sign documents giving you power of attorney? No, but did he ever explicitly tell you to transfer his property into your names? Brandon hesitated. Not explicitly, but we understood. Yes or no, Mr. Moresby? No. So despite having no documentation, no power of attorney, no explicit permission, you and your wife took it upon yourselves to forge your father's signature and steal his property? Objection. Lydia's lawyer shot up. Sustained. Rephrase, Ms. Chen. Let me ask differently. Did you benefit financially from these transfers? Brandon's face flushed. We were helping. Did you benefit financially? Yes or no? Yes. No further questions. Brandon left the stand without looking at me again. I felt something crack inside. Not heartbreak. That had already happened. This was different. This was acceptance. My son was gone. The boy I raised had disappeared, replaced by this stranger who'd lie under oath to protect his theft. The prosecutor called me last. I walked to the stand on my cane, raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth, sat down and looked at the jury. Ms. Chen approached gently. Mr. Moresby, did you give your son and daughter-in-law permission to transfer your property into their names? No. Did you ask them to manage your finances? No. My daughter-in-law started doing it without asking. When I objected, they called me forgetful. Are you forgetful, Mr. Moresby? No more than anyone my age. I remember every conversation we had, every lie they told, every document they stole. She walked me through the timeline, the missing bank statements, the fake signatures, the eviction from my own home. My voice stayed steady, calm. The facts spoke for themselves. Lydia's lawyer tried to shake me during cross-examination. "Mr. Moresby, isn't it true you're on medication for blood pressure?" "Yes." "Doesn't that medication sometimes cause confusion?" "No. I take one pill a day. Makes me pee more. Doesn't make me forget my own signature." Some jurors smiled. The lawyer frowned. "Isn't it possible you simply don't remember giving permission?" "I remember everything. I remember the day I built that house. I remember my wife dying there. I remember my daughter-in-law stealing it." I looked directly at Lydia. "I remember all of it." He had no more questions. Closing arguments were quick. The prosecutor summarized the evidence. The defense claimed it was all a misunderstanding. The jury was dismissed to deliberate. Harvey and I waited in the hallway. Hours passed. I watched people come and go. Lawyers, defendants, families, all of them dealing with their own dramas, their own betrayals. Finally, after 4 hours, the bailiff called us back. The jury had reached a verdict. We filed in. Lydia looked terrified. Brandon sat behind her, pale. The jury foreman stood. "On the count of forgery, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of elder financial abuse, we find the defendant guilty." Lydia collapsed into sobs. Brandon grabbed her shoulders. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. "Mrs. Moresby, you have been found guilty on all counts. Sentencing is scheduled for April 15th. Until then, you will remain free on bail. Court is adjourned." I stood slowly, felt Harvey's hand on my shoulder. We'd won. Completely. Totally. The jury had seen through the lies and delivered justice. Outside, reporters swarmed again. This time I stopped. Looked into the cameras. Justice doesn't need noise. Just truth. And today, truth won. We drove home in silence. When Harvey dropped me off, he shook my hand. "Frank, you did it. Everything you set out to do. You should be proud." I nodded. But I didn't feel proud. Just tired. So incredibly tired. Inside the house, Margaret's photo waited on the mantel. I sat in front of it and let the tears finally come. Not from sadness. From release. From the weight of months of fighting finally lifting. "We did it, Maggie. She's going to prison. The house is ours. Justice came home. The roses outside were blooming. Yellow and bright and full of life. Just like Margaret would have wanted." Brandon turned to leave, whispering something I couldn't hear. But I didn't need to hear it. His testimony had said everything. She'd asked why I was there. And now she had her answer. I was there to prove that the old man they buried in betrayal still knew how to rise. Sentencing day arrived on a Tuesday, April 15th. Tax day. Seemed fitting somehow. Time for Lydia to pay what she owed. Not to the government. To justice. To me. I almost didn't go. Harvey said I didn't need to be there. The judge would sentence her based on guidelines and the pre-sentence report. My presence wouldn't change anything. But I wanted to be there. Needed to see it through to the end. The courtroom was less crowded this time. No news crews. No curious onlookers. Just the necessary players in this final act. Lydia sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit. They'd revoked her bail after she'd tried to flee to her sister's place in Georgia. Got caught at the state line with Brandon driving. He wasn't charged, but it hadn't looked good. Brandon wasn't in the courtroom today. Hadn't been at any hearing since the verdict. Harvey heard through the grapevine he'd filed for divorce. Packed up and moved to Tampa. Started over alone. Part of me felt sorry for him. But a bigger part remembered him testifying against me, calling me forgetful, backing her lies. Judge Morrison entered and we rose. She'd presided over this whole mess with fairness and patience. Now she'd deliver the final blow. Mrs. Moresby, you have been found guilty of multiple serious crimes. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say? Lydia stood shakily. Her lawyer stood beside her. She'd prepared a statement. I could tell by the way she unfolded a paper with trembling hands. Your Honor, I want to apologize to Franklin Moresby. I made terrible mistakes. I let greed and fear cloud my judgment. I told myself I was helping, but the truth is I was stealing. From a man who'd shown me nothing but kindness. From my husband's father. From someone who trusted me. Her voice cracked. I destroyed a family. Ruined my marriage. Hurt a good man. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I'm truly, deeply sorry. She sat down, crying. Real tears this time. Not manipulation. Actual remorse. Too late, but at least it was honest. Judge Morrison looked at her without sympathy. Mrs. Moresby, elder financial abuse is one of the most despicable crimes in our legal system. You targeted someone vulnerable due to age. You manipulated family trust for personal gain. You forged documents, lied under oath, and when caught, you attempted to flee. Your apology, while noted, does not mitigate the severity of your actions. She paused, looking at her notes. On the count of forgery, I sentence you to 3 years in state prison. On the count of fraud, I sentence you to 3 years to run concurrently. On the count of elder financial abuse, I sentence you to 5 years to run consecutively. Total sentence, 8 years in state prison. You will be eligible for parole after serving 5 years. You are also ordered to pay restitution to Mr. Moresby in the amount of $73,000, the total you stole from him. She banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. 8 years. Lydia collapsed completely. Her lawyer grabbed her arm. Guards moved in to take her away. As they led her past my row, she looked at me one last time. Our eyes met. I saw a woman who'd gambled everything on greed and lost it all. Her freedom. Her marriage. Her future. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No joy. No revenge-fueled happiness. Just emptiness where anger used to be. Outside, Harvey walked me to his car. 8 years is a strong sentence. Judge Morrison wanted to send a message about elder abuse. Will she serve all 8? Probably 5 with good behavior. She'll be 43 when she gets out. Still young enough to rebuild. Young enough to rebuild. Unlike me at 74 with limited years to enjoy what I'd fought so hard to reclaim. Harvey drove me home for the last time. Our business was concluded. He'd won my case, saved my house, delivered justice. Now his job was done. He pulled into my driveway and turned to me. Frank, you're one of the toughest men I've ever met. What you did, fighting back at your age after everything they put you through, that took real courage. Margaret would be proud. I shook his hand. Thank you, Harvey. For everything. For believing me. For fighting when I wanted to give up. You never wanted to give up. I could see it in your eyes that first day. You just needed someone to help channel the anger into action. He smiled. Go plant those roses and enjoy your home. You earned it. I watched him drive away, then turned to face my house. The yellow paint gleamed in the afternoon sun. The porch I'd rebuilt stood strong. Through the windows I could see Margaret's photos on the walls, The furniture I'd carefully chosen to match our old pieces, the life I'd painstakingly reconstructed. Inside felt different now. Lighter somehow. The ghosts of Lydia and Brandon had been exorcised by justice. What remained was mine. Purely, legally, morally mine. I made coffee and sat on the back porch looking at the garden. The roses Margaret loved had bloomed spectacularly. Yellow flowers everywhere, filling the air with sweetness. I'd planted them in her honor, and they'd rewarded me with beauty, with hope, with proof that life continues even after betrayal. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Dad. Brandon's voice. First time I'd heard it in months. I'm listening. I heard about the sentencing. 8 years. He paused. I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. For not believing you. For testifying against you. For choosing her over you. I was wrong. About all of it. The words I'd wanted to hear for months. Now they felt hollow. Meaningless. Brandon, do you know what hurt most? Not the theft. Not the lies. Not even losing the house. I took a breath. It was watching you become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who'd destroy his own father to protect a thief. I know. I was blind. She manipulated me, but that's not an excuse. I should have seen the truth. Should have protected you instead of helping her. Yes, you should have. Silence stretched between us. Finally, Brandon spoke again. Can you forgive me? Eventually. I know I don't deserve it, but maybe someday. I looked at Margaret's photo through the window. Thought about what she'd want. She'd always believed in second chances. In redemption. In family. Brandon, forgiveness isn't something I can give you today. Maybe not this year. Maybe never. What you did broke something between us that might not be fixable. I softened slightly. But I don't hate you. You're still my son. You're just not my son right now. You're a stranger who needs to figure out who he wants to be. I understand. His voice cracked. I love you, Dad. I know I didn't show it, but I do. Love without loyalty is just words, son. When you learn the difference, call me back. I hung up. Set the phone down. Felt tears on my cheeks but didn't wipe them away. Maybe someday we'd rebuild our relationship. Maybe we wouldn't. Either way, I'd survived his betrayal. Survived losing him. That knowledge gave me power. Gave me freedom. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water gold. Margaret's favorite time of day. I raised my coffee cup toward the sky. We won, Maggie. Not just the house. Not just the money. We won ourselves back. Proved that age doesn't mean powerless. That betrayal doesn't mean defeated. I smiled. Thank you for giving me the strength to fight. For teaching me what real love looks like. For being the reason I couldn't let them win. A breeze moved through the roses, carrying their scent. For just a second, I felt her hand on my shoulder. Felt her pride. Felt her love surrounding me like armor. Justice had been served. Lydia would spend years in prison thinking about her crimes. Brandon would spend years living with his guilt. And me. I'd spend my remaining years in the home I'd built, surrounded by memories of the woman I loved, grateful for the chance to prove that sometimes the underdog wins. Sometimes the old man they tried to bury comes back. And when he does, he doesn't come back broken. He comes back whole. Would you have forgiven your son for betraying you like that? Let me know in the comments, because the final chapter shows what happened when I finally found peace in the garden where it all began. 6 months after the sentencing, spring returned to the lake house. My second spring back home. But this one felt different from the last. The first had been about restoration. This one was about living. The roses Margaret planted were mature now, full and healthy. I'd added new varieties she would have loved. Reds and pinks and whites mixing with her yellows. The garden had become my sanctuary, my therapy, my daily reminder that beautiful things could grow from scorched earth. I woke each morning to the sound of water lapping against the shore. Made coffee the way Margaret taught me, strong enough to wake the dead. Sat on the porch watching the sun rise over the lake, grateful for another day in the home I'd almost lost forever. The house felt like ours again. I'd slowly replaced everything Lydia had changed. Found Margaret's cast iron skillet at an antique store, different one but the same make and model. Hung photos in every room, images of our life together. Our wedding. Brandon as a baby. Christmases and birthdays and ordinary Tuesdays that had been extraordinary simply because we lived them together. People asked if I was lonely. Harvey stopped by once a month to check on me. Neighbors invited me to potlucks and church dinners. I went sometimes. Other times, I preferred the quiet. After 74 years, I'd earned the right to choose my company carefully. To value peace over obligation. Brandon called every few weeks. Short conversations. Awkward, but improving. He'd moved back to Clearwater, rented an apartment downtown, got a job with a different engineering firm. Said he was in therapy working through what he'd done. I told him that was good. That healing takes time. That I wasn't ready to see him in person, but maybe someday. The divorce was final. Lydia had signed the papers from prison. No contest. Probably hoped it would help with parole. Brandon seemed relieved and devastated in equal measure. He'd loved her once. Maybe still did. But he'd learned the hard way that love without integrity destroys everything it touches. One afternoon in October, almost 2 years since the courtroom confrontation, I was in the garden deadheading roses when I heard a truck in the driveway. I turned, expecting Harvey or a delivery, and saw Brandon's old Ford. He got out slowly, nervously. Held up his hands like approaching a wild animal. "Dad, I'm sorry for just showing up. I should have called first. I can leave if you want." I straightened, my back protesting. Studied the man walking toward me. He looked healthier than the last time I'd seen him in court. Less haunted. His eyes were clearer. He'd let his hair grow longer, the way he used to wear it before Lydia convinced him to cut it short. "You drove all the way out here," I said. "Might as well come see what I've done with the garden." Relief flooded his face. He approached carefully, stopping a few feet away. His eyes scanned the roses, the rebuilt stone pathway, the bird bath Margaret had loved that I'd found at an estate sale. "It looks beautiful, Dad. Like I remember it. Like when Mom was alive." That was the point. We stood in uncomfortable silence. A fish jumped in the lake. Somewhere a neighbor was mowing their lawn. Normal sounds of a normal day, except nothing about this moment was normal. "I've been going to therapy twice a week," Brandon said finally. "Working through how I let Lydia manipulate me. How I chose to believe her lies because it was easier than facing the truth. How I betrayed you." He swallowed hard. "The therapist says I need to make amends. Not for me. For the people I hurt. So I came to say I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because I want something or need forgiveness. Just because you deserve to hear it face to face." I set down my pruning shears, pulled off my gloves. Looked at my son, really looked at him, for the first time in 2 years. Saw the guilt carved into his features. The regret. The shame. But also something new. Accountability. Growth. The beginning of the man I'd tried to raise. "You hurt me worse than anyone ever has," I said quietly. "Worse than losing your mother. Worse than being robbed. Because you were supposed to be on my side. You were supposed to be the one person I could trust no matter what. I know. You testified against me. Called me forgetful. Made me look like a confused old man who didn't know his own mind. I know. His voice cracked. I lie awake at night thinking about it. How I sat up there and lied under oath about my own father. How I protected someone who was destroying you. I can't take it back. Can't undo it. But I swear to God, Dad, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of being your son again. Tears rolled down his face. No hiding them. No pretending to be strong. Just raw honesty and pain. I thought about Margaret. About what she'd say if she were here. She'd already told me, in a way. Through the roses that kept blooming. Through the home that kept standing. Through the love that survived even death. She'd say that grudges poison the holder more than the target. That forgiveness doesn't excuse the crime but frees the victim. I'm not ready to forget what happened, I said. Might never be. What you did broke something fundamental between us. Brandon nodded, wiping his eyes. I understand. But, I continued, your mother would want me to leave the door open. Not wide open. Just cracked. Enough for you to prove you've changed. To show me through actions, not words, that you learned something from this nightmare. Hope flickered in his eyes. I'll prove it. However long it takes. Start by helping me finish this garden bed. My back isn't what it used to be, and I've got 20 more rose bushes to plant before winter. He stared at me, processing. Then a smile, tentative and grateful, spread across his face. I'd like that. We worked side by side for the next 2 hours. Digging holes. Planting roses. Spreading mulch. Not talking much, just being. Father and son doing what we'd done 1,000 times when he was young. Building something together with dirt under our nails and sweat on our brows. As the sun started setting, painting the lake orange and gold, we stood back to admire our work. 20 new rose bushes, each one a promise of future beauty. Each one a small step toward something that might eventually resemble forgiveness. Thank you, Dad, Brandon said, for letting me help. For not kicking me off the property. Don't thank me yet. This doesn't fix everything. You've got years of rebuilding ahead of you. I know. But at least I'm starting. He left as the last light faded. I watched his taillights disappear down Lakeshore Drive, then turned back to the house. Margaret's photo waited on the mantel, her smile forever frozen in time. What do you think, Maggie? Did I do right letting him back in a little? The house stayed quiet, but I felt her answer in my bones. Yes. Not because he deserved it yet, but because holding on to hate was heavier than holding on to hope. The months that followed brought a rhythm I hadn't expected. Brandon came by every Sunday. We'd work in the garden, fix things around the house, sometimes just sit on the porch drinking coffee and watching the water. Slow rebuilding. Careful trust. Testing whether the foundation we'd once had could support weight again. He never made excuses. Never blamed Lydia entirely. Owned his choices and their consequences. That meant something. Not everything, but something. The 1-year mark of the sentencing came and went. Lydia was in a women's prison 3 hours north. Brandon had visited her twice, he told me. Not to reconcile but to get closure. To tell her face to face that their marriage was over, that what she'd done was unforgivable, that he hoped she'd use her time to become a better person. How'd she take it? I asked. She cried. Said she understood. Said she was sorry for destroying everything. He paused. I think she meant it. Prison changes people. Sometimes for the better. I didn't care if it changed her or not. She'd served 1 year of 8. Still had plenty of time to think about her crimes. My concern was my son and whether he'd truly learned from his mistakes. By the second anniversary of the courtroom confrontation, things had shifted significantly. Brandon had earned back small pieces of trust. He still came every Sunday. Had started calling me during the week just to check in. Sent me articles he thought I'd find interesting. Showed up when my truck wouldn't start and fixed it without being asked. Small things. Consistent things. The kind of things that prove character over time. One Sunday in December, as we were hanging Christmas lights on the porch, he stopped and looked at me. "Dad, I want to say something and I need you to just listen." I set down the strand of lights. "Okay. I wasted 2 years of your life and mine because I was too weak to see the truth. You're 76 now. You don't have unlimited years left, and neither do I with you. I can't get those 2 years back. Can't undo the pain I caused. But I can make sure the years we have left count for something." He took a breath. "I know I'm not the son you raised, but I'm trying to become the man you deserved. And I just wanted you to know that." Something in my chest loosened. Not forgiveness entirely, but close. Acceptance, maybe. Recognition that people can change if they're willing to do the work. "You're getting there," I said simply. "Not there yet, but getting there." He nodded, satisfied. We finished hanging the lights as the sun set behind us, father and son rebuilding what betrayal had destroyed. That Christmas was quiet but good. Brandon came over for dinner. I made Margaret's pot roast recipe. We ate at the same table where Lydia had announced she'd stolen my house 3 years earlier. But the memory had less power now. Time and justice had diminished it to a scar instead of an open wound. "To second chances," Brandon said, raising his glass. "To earned redemption," I corrected, but I clinked my glass against his. After dinner, we sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the Christmas lights reflect off the lake. The roses were dormant, sleeping through winter, saving their energy for spring. Like me. Like Brandon. Like everything that survives the cold by going quiet and deep. "Do you think Mom would be proud of how we handled this?" Brandon asked. I thought about Margaret. Her strength. Her grace. Her belief that people deserved chances to grow. "She'd be disappointed in the choices you made," I said honestly. "But proud that you owned them and did the hard work to change." That's what mattered to her. Not perfection. Growth. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes after surviving storms together. The years ahead wouldn't be perfect. Trust, once broken, never fits together quite the same way. There would always be a crack, a seam, a reminder of what happened. But cracked things can still hold water. Can still serve their purpose. Can still be beautiful in their brokenness. I'd reclaimed my house, my dignity, my life. I'd watched justice delivered to those who'd stolen from me. I'd learned that age doesn't equal weakness and that fighting back is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself. But more than that, I'd learned that restoration takes many forms. Sometimes it's rebuilding a house. Sometimes it's replanting a garden. And sometimes it's the slow, painful process of allowing someone who hurt you to prove they've changed. The lake stretched out before us, dark and deep and eternal. Margaret's roses would bloom again in spring. Brandon would keep showing up, keep earning back what he'd lost. And I would keep living in the home I'd fought so hard to reclaim, surrounded by memories of love and lessons about betrayal. When Lydia had asked why I was there in that courtroom, I'd said I came to take back what was mine. But sitting on that porch with my son, 3 years older and infinitely wiser, I realized I'd taken back more than property. I'd taken back my power to choose who deserved my trust. My right to demand accountability. My refusal to disappear quietly when someone tried to erase me. My understanding that family isn't defined by blood or blind loyalty but by consistent, proven love. Most importantly, I'd taken back the belief that even at 76, with more years behind me than ahead, I still had the strength to plant roses and watch them bloom. To rebuild what was broken. To offer second chances carefully and conditionally. To live fully in the home I'd almost lost, grateful for every sunrise over the water. Margaret's photo smiled at me through the window. I smiled back. "We did it, Maggie," I whispered. "We survived. We restored. We won." And in the quiet of that December night, with my son beside me and my home secure around me, I finally understood what victory really meant. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice, though that mattered. Victory was waking up each morning in the bed I'd shared with her, in the house we'd built, in the life they'd tried to steal, and choosing joy over bitterness. Choosing to live instead of merely existing. Choosing to believe that sometimes the old man they tried to bury becomes the gardener who makes beauty bloom from ashes. That was restoration. That was power. That was the true meaning of taking back what was mine. Not just the property, but myself. If Franklin's journey from betrayal to restoration moved you, share this story so others can be inspired to fight for what's rightfully theirs. Have you ever had to rebuild after someone you trusted destroyed what you built? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story about courage, justice, and the unbreakable human spirit. Your thoughts could inspire someone else who's fighting their own battle. See you in the next story.